Two comments about Jitendra Malik's presentation he recently gave, links in the show notes. One is imitation learning, sim to real to sim. That's, I think, just a technical way to say what we here at Orange Cap Partners are really excited about, which is robot learning from video. We'll talk about that. And then the second thing, he actually ended his talk with, in my opinion, the most important question, that is, how do we define rewards, and how do we actually, how do we explain, for example, why a child is playing? In other words, we want, he mentions in the presentation Turing's famous quote that instead of designing a system that learns, we should design a child's brain and then have that child's brain learn. But the question then is, why do children play? And in my opinion, the goal of a child is to grow up as a human, avoid tigers, and find the mate. That's the ultimate goal that we pursue as humans. And we learn to play because that has shown to be more successful as a strategy to learn what we need to know to pursue our goals. You could argue that eventually everything, you know, if you want to quote Elon Musk, is all about entertainment, but then you ask yourself, okay, why is something entertaining and other things aren't? And the answer is often because we're entertained by things that are beneficial to us. So I want to talk about this a little bit more. This is very important to us. This is, I think, the era of experience. Richard Sutton, and we've spoken about his presentation several times on this podcast, and I think we are, you know, really the ultimate learning objective of any kind of AI system is the setting of the appropriate goals. So again, two things we want to talk about here. One is the actual approach, the architecture that Malik and others are pursuing at Berkeley, and then the question about goals. It's not even on podcast. It's February 27, 2026. This is Kremdelka for the year. We're down 10.2%. The market's up 50 basis points, underperforming by 10.7%. So sim to real to sim, that is, the idea is the following. So you learn from video, you learn from humans, but because you want to scale this up you want to scale this up, you want to learn from YouTube videos. That requires, amongst other things, pose estimation in 4D. So you have a human that does things, and you can obviously learn from that human what she is doing. But then when you go to sim, when you go, you know, you want to simulate that. So in other words, you want to now take that and create many more trajectories and learn how to simulate other environments that are similar or, you know, adjacent by introducing randomness and things along those lines. I don't want to go too much into the technicals. The papers are listed in the presentation, but I think the way I understand it is you have a person going up the stairs, and then you take that and then you simulate that going up the stairs on millions and millions of different types of stairs, millions and millions of different types of surfaces. And then you go back to real. In other words, now you're in the real, you know, so you take that, what you've simulated, you make sure you fine tune it, and then you go back to sim by learning from the real, and then you have a sort of a learning algorithm. That's kind of the way I understand it. I think the key here again is mimic. It's a paper that came out from Berkeley. They're not the only ones who do this, but the idea is really imitation learning. What is imitation learning really? Imitation learning is learning a system, learning the dynamics of the system by observing people who are exposed to the system. So how do you learn the dynamics of going up the stairs? Or what does it even mean, stairs? Well, you can learn the dynamics of stairs by watching people going upstairs. So that's kind of like a Fourier transform idea where you take information from a system by observing another dimension of the system, in this case, an agent that goes up the stairs. And by that, you can then learn about the system. But the idea, of course, in reinforcement learning is not to learn the system, to describe the system. We don't really care about the physics of stairs. What we care about is how to go up the stairs. We don't care about the physics of a Coca-Cola bottle. What we want to do is open the bottle or put the bottle somewhere else. So that's roughly what we're talking about here. Now, the question then in reinforcement learning is the reward function. And Jitendra talks about this. He says the reward function in imitation learning is simply follow the person. Like that's how you get rewarded. And you have dense information here because the person is doing actions, let's say action chunks to use technical terms. So moving your hand towards the bottle is one action chunk. Grabbing the bottle is one action chunk. Putting the bottle in a shelf is another action chunk. And so you learn how to execute that, and you get rewarded for doing the right thing every time you do that. Now, the question, of course, is when you get to, let's say, dexterous hand manipulation, it becomes more and more difficult to actually chunk these actions because the sort of human dimension, particularly vision-based human dimension, at some point doesn't have the kind of granularity. And then you're, I think, in the realm of goal-based reinforcement learning. In other words, I think you have to stop mimicking holding a bottle and define the goal of, okay, how this bottle needs to be put in the fridge. That's the goal. Or maybe the goal should be, I want to be able to have a clean kitchen that functions. And then you learn over millions and millions of trajectories. The agent learns that having a Coca-Cola bottle not in the fridge is not a clean kitchen because not a clean functioning kitchen because you want to have a cold bottle. So you'll learn over time that you're only going to get rewarded if that Coca-Cola bottle is in the fridge. So in other words, and then you learn how to do that by learning all the motor skills. That brings me to the point, the bitter lesson question, which almost every presentation at this point I attend is questioning. Okay, look, if we had enough data, we can just do a data-driven pixel to actuator type learning mechanism. But because we don't, we need to have priors and shortcuts. I think fundamentally, starting from a video-based approach, learning from video, learning to mimic from video, then in sim will get us quite a bit. Dexterity is a problem that needs to be solved, in my opinion, through proper reward function design, which of course is a prior too. The reward function design is a prior. So maybe the goal then should be to hold the bottle, not break the bottle, put the bottle somewhere, or in general, be able to move the bottle. I think goal definitions, goal formulation in itself is a very interesting problem that we should be talking about more. So to summarize, I think Jitendra's presentation is always very inspiring. He has that deep thinking type approach towards this problem. He makes robotics look interesting, unlike many others who make it look as boring as possible because probably they're not very excited about the field themselves. Now, Jitendra is not that kind of person. He really is excited about it, and he has a very deep, interesting approach towards it. And I think fundamentally, what he's trying to do here is solve the problem with the kinds of bitter lesson type methodologies. But since we are not ready for that, he's opening a trajectory for that path. And that would be a goal-driven, data-driven policy. Thank you.